On This Week in Enterprise Tech, what does the Apple-IBM merger mean for the enterprise? Are we backing the wrong horse in the net neutrality debate? And Raphael Mudge comes on to talk about threat multiplication. Quiet on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Twit. This Week in Enterprise Tech, Episode 101, recorded July 28, 2014. Threat Multiplication with Raphael Mudge. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by IT Pro TV. Are you looking to upgrade your IT skills or prepare for certifications? IT Pro TV offers engaging and informative tutorials streamed to your Roku, computer, or mobile device. For 30% off the lifetime of your account, go to itpro.tv/enterprise and use the code ENTERPRISE30. And by TechServe, the world's largest independent Apple retailer and professional services provider. Go to techserve.com/quiet-7sins to get access to the free ebook on the 7 deadly sins of iPad deployment. Welcome to Twit, This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. And joining me today is a motley crew, a cast of characters of really, really good geeks, starting with Mr. Curtis Franklin from Information Week. Curtis, how are you doing over on the right coast?
I am doing great, Padre. Just enjoying a balmy summer day in the swamp, mid-90s in both temperature and humidity, and getting ready to head out to where it's hotter but drier, going to be at Black Hat next week in Las Vegas.
Yes, and I'll be there with you. And actually, our special guest, Raphael, will be there, too. We're going to bring him in later in the show. But before we get to that, we welcome to the show, to a co-hosting spot, longtime friend of the show. In fact, he was on one of our very first episodes. Mr. Lou Maresca, senior developer with Microsoft. Lou is stepping in for Brian Chi, who is currently on a special mission for the NSA. Lou, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Padre. Thanks for having me again.
Now, we have to ask this just because... Well, we don't have to, but I'm going to ask it. Are you okay at Microsoft? There's been an awful lot of pink going on recently. You're not moving anywhere, are you?
So far nothing. But you never know with these companies.
Well, they'd be foolish to let you go with all that you do, especially since you were Code Warrior for Coding 101. But gentlemen, let's get right into it with the Enterprise Blips. Let me kick it off with, welcome to the Internet of Things, powered by the energy of things. Last week at a trade show in Tokyo, researchers demonstrated a prototype device that could supply power to sensors and transmitters, all without batteries. The device worked by harvesting vibrations from the air, turning it into very small amounts of usable electricity, somewhere between 1.5 and 5 volts. The researchers are hoping to shrink their devices into a module measuring 5 by 6 centimeters and combine it with a MIPS communication and sensor chip. If it works, the Internet of Things just got a lot more possible.
And it smells like teen porn. Dogs in several states are being trained to sniff out child pornography? Well, sort of. Turns out that hard drives and other storage devices have a characteristic smell that our canine helpers can be taught to identify. When law enforcement thinks a suspect might have hidden a storage device containing child porn, they bring in the dogs. When they find a device hidden in a suspicious location, it's considered evidence of wrongdoing. Now, no one is in favor of child porn, but this raises some very real questions for the enterprise. Are safes, filing cabinets, locked storage units, and other normal IT department equipment storage areas suspicious? Well, it depends on who's looking and why. In an age of ultra-vigilant and some would say ultra-intrusive surveillance, getting your legal team to weigh in on your company's physical data storage policies could be a wise investment.
Mo data, mo problems, unless you work with Hadoop. HP has invested $50 million in Hadoop developers Hortonworks. The partnership calls for teaming up on sales and integration Hortonworks flavor of Hadoop and in HP's data processing service, Haven, which stands for Hadoop Autonomy, Vertica, Enterprise. Aside from the cash, Hortonworks gets access to much bigger customer base and the chance to shape HP's future big data offerings.
Well, Bose most definitely didn't forget about Dre. We've been accustomed to Apple playing the plaintiff in some of the biggest game-changing lawsuits that touch the consumer and enterprise side alike. But this time, Bose is taking the part of the aggressor in going after Beats Electronics, recently acquired by Apple in a blockbuster $3 billion purchase. Bose claims that Beats violates 5 of their patents surrounding Bose's noise reduction technology. It's probably no coincidence that the lawsuit comes after Beats has come into an impressive pile of cash, though it will be interesting to see if Apple's legal department of doom will be able to handle a case that doesn't involve a Korean handset manufacturer. No response yet on how Beats will react now that Bose has decided to F with Dre.
The default is more money. Earlier today, Oracle started shipping the 12.1.0.2 release of Oracle Database in what the company has called, quote, the most comprehensive patch set we've ever built, end quote. One of the key components of the release is Oracle's in-memory database, which should speed many functions by a factor of nearly 100. The company's response to SAP's HANA platform should be good news for some key customers, but one aspect of the rollout could be very bad news indeed. It seems that Oracle turned on the $23,000 per CPU option by default, something that could lead to a most unpleasant surprise for an unwary enterprise. Oracle hasn't kept the functionality any sort of secret, but customers should carefully walk down the options list before putting the update into production. Trust me, your accounting department will thank you.
In Soviet Russia, Tor finds you. The Scientific Production Association for Special Purpose Equipment and Communications of the Russian Interior Ministry, no, seriously, that's their name, a division within the Russian Ministry of the Interior, is offering a contract to create methods and technologies that can be used to obtain information about users and their equipment who are using the Tor network. The Tor, or the Onion Router, is a popular worldwide anonymization technology that the US and UK have been able to compromise through the use of browser malware. But the Russian efforts seem to be focused on breaking the Tor network itself. Though the Scientific Production Association for et cetera, did not specifically state why they want de-anonymization technology, many in intelligence circles suggest that it will be used to locate individuals who have sums of unclaimed cash given to them by Nigerian princes. That's the end of the blip. When we come right back, we're going to be getting into some enterprise bites, and then we've got Raphael Mudge coming back onto the show to scare the packets right out of you. But before that, I wanted to take some time to talk about the first sponsor of the Twilight Ride, and of course, that's itpro.tv. Now, one of the questions we get asked most often, in fact, I just got this asked last night in the chat room, is how do I get into IT? There's always questions about what certs I should be taking, or what training I should be doing, or should I be signing up for an apprenticeship? Now, all those things are good, but if you want a centralized, one-stop shop that will give you the information, the knowledge that you need for both an apprenticeship or a cert, well, you got to stop by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV is a video network dedicated exclusively to the world of information technology. Whether you're looking to jumpstart a career in IT or you're already working in the field, IT Pro TV supplements traditional learning methods in a fun and engaging way that maximizes your learning and prepares you for certification exams. IT Pro TV offers hundreds of hours of content, with 30 hours being added each week. They have an extensive and growing episode library with video courses on Apple, Microsoft, Cisco, and more, with course topics that cover practical subjects like network security, Linux and Windows, and OS X support for desktops and servers, and dozens of other real-world situations. But it ain't all sterile textbooks and certification manuals. IT Pro TV hosts tell engaging stories and share experiences, which makes it easier for you to remember the content and the technologies. That's Education 101, folks. They give you the knowledge and an easy way to recall that knowledge when you're filling out your exam. Speaking of exams and certs, IT Pro TV offers courses that are designed to help you pass A+, CCNA, Security+, MCSA, CISSP, Linux Plus, and Apple certs. The episode library is organized by exam objectives, making it easy for you to target your trouble areas, better preparing you to pass your certification exam. IT Pro TV also has an intuitive interface and a learning management system that allows you to track your progress in each lesson. If you've watched any of their live lessons, you may have noticed that they look a lot like Twit. Well, that's because they're friends of Twit. They've designed their studio with the same cameras, the same TriCaster, because they love what Leo has done and they wanted to bring it to the enterprise cloud. My favorite part of their learning system is their virtual sandbox. It's a lab environment for hands-on practice and learning that lets you play with millions of dollars worth of gear from the comfort of your own HTML5 browser. Best of all, it's lesson targeted. Folks, if you want to learn something specific, this is where you go, IT Pro TV. The shows are streamed live and are available on demand worldwide to your Roku computer or mobile device. You pay one low monthly price, comparable to a cert manual, which gives you all-access membership with daily updates. IT Pro TV also has a no-hassle, no-muss, no-fuss, easy cancellation policy, so if it's not for you, you can always get your money back. Measure Up practice exams are included with your subscription, which are a $79 value, and annual subscribers can now download episodes and MP3s for offline consumption. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to try IT Pro TV. We want to see if maybe the corporate account pricing might be right for you. Check out itpro.tv/enterprise. Upgrade your brain with the most popular certifications recognized by employers. There's also a free preview on the site if you want to check out some of their videos or their live stream. Subscriptions are normally $57 per month or $570 for the entire year, but we have a special offer because they're huge fans of Twit. If you sign up now and use the code Enterprise30, that's Enterprise30, you'll receive 30% off your subscription for the lifetime of your account. That's less than $40 per month or $399 for the entire year. That's itpro.tv/enterprise. itpro.tv/enterprise and use the code Enterprise30 to receive 30% off. And we thank IT Pro for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let's get back into it. Our first Enterprise Bite is all about IBM and Apple. Now, we heard about this story a few weeks ago about how there's going to be a partnership between IBM and Apple. Well, now we kind of know what the shape of that partnership is going to look like. IBM will be pushing iPhones and iPads to their enterprise customers, while Apple will provide support and warranty service under a new enterprise-grade Apple Care plan. Apple will be responsible for providing 24/7 telephone and email support for end users, and they claim that there will be a 1-hour initial response time for IBM's enterprise IT customers. IBM, for their part, will provide the on-site service, on-site repair or replacement of iOS devices, plus they're going to stock iOS devices, both tablets and iPhones, even the older versions, so that they can do an immediate turnover of broken gear. They will also be the primary contact for the customers. Now, the enterprise plan will probably be priced above Apple Care for Business, which runs about $49,995 a year. It's going to be in that general range. I want to throw this over to you first, Curtis. This is one of these things where when it was announced, it was interesting. It caused a little bit of ripple in the stock market. But now that you see a bit more of how this plan is going to work, does this partnership make sense to you?
Oh, I think it absolutely does make sense because it does a number of things. One is it brings Apple's very notable expertise in customer care to the IBM clients. Now, I think it's great because IBM is known for their field service, which they're providing under this. Apple is known for their customer handholding, the customer experience that everyone keeps talking about. That will be brought to more enterprise customers through this. The key thing, though, is that Apple gets IBM's integration and software services. That is going to make the iPad, and iPhone for that matter, much more desirable for the enterprise customers. Now, I think that what we're going to see actually is a gradual rise in the number of iPads going into enterprises. I mean, let's face it, there are a fair number of them there anyway. What this will likely do, though, is help put an even stronger firewall in place against the encroachment of Android. A lot of enterprises don't like Android because of the fragmentation. This brings the ultimate unity, IBM and Apple, into what is traditionally a very conservative marketplace. I think it's going to be a solid, if not spectacular, win for everybody.
Okay, what about that, Lou? Is it going to be a win for everybody? I mean, you are established in a corporation that that has made a lot of money off the enterprise. Specifically, has made a lot of money off of that very fear of movement, that fear of change that Curtis has mentioned. Do you think this partnership between an established enterprise player and the BYOD champion of late would make a difference? Do you see this as being the deciding factor when enterprises decide we need a BYOD or a tablet presence?
So I think it's going to help a little bit. I mean, one of the things that Apple has been kind of striving for is to kind of get into this space for a while, especially in the BYOD kind of space. And Microsoft's been there for a while. Google's getting there, with their System Setter Configuration Manager, Microsoft. I mean, this is a place where Apple's been striving to get to for a long time. And IBM kind of fulfills all of those, with their MDM, which is their mobile device management. I think it's called MAS, IBM MAS 30 or whatever. IBM has support for that. Microsoft has kind of had that for a while, and they've been kind of pushing it, especially with their System Center stuff. So I think that's one thing that Apple's been kind of striving for a while. So I'm going to see that's going to help for a little bit, depending on what IBM can support. Now, there's a lot of things around device management that, like asset management, secured wireless, and secured VPN. A lot of things that we're going to be required by iOS that maybe IBM can supply that other services like Google and Microsoft have been doing for a while. So there's still a lot of catch up to do, and I'm hoping that they can kind of get there, because a lot of our applications and other people's applications work on all platforms, and they hope to kind of take advantage of some of those application contents.
Well, guys, here's another wrinkle on that. Recently, there was an article from Network World that talked about the Q2 tablet sales and how Apple was losing their dominance in a market that they really created. In Q2, the tablet shipments totaled almost 50 million, with Apple taking about 13.3 million units shipped. That's about a 26.9% market share, while Samsung taking a total of 8.5 million units sold, good for a 17.1% market share. Now, the takeaway from their article was that you had the top five. You had Apple, you had Samsung, you had Lenovo, ASUS Tech, and Acer, but then everybody else, all the other manufacturers, actually outgrew the top five. None of them were selling iPads. They were all selling some form of Android or Windows. So the question to you is will this partnership stem the loss of growth to Android and Windows tablets? Curtis, let me start with you.
I don't know that it will stem it all that much. I think it might slow it a bit, because let's face it, the big numbers that we're talking about tend to be in the consumer market rather than the enterprise market. The enterprise is big, but the real dollars come in all of the back-end support and software and integration money that goes into the market. What you're seeing is a lot of different Android devices, and for that matter, Windows devices, many of whom are starting from a fairly low base, seeing pretty good growth. Apple has a fairly mature technology, a fairly mature product that hasn't been updated in at least a year. And so it's natural that they would see the kind of growth or lack of growth that they're seeing. I think it's important to remember that these numbers for the last quarter that people have gotten so excited about, Tim Cook said that these were in line with Apple's expectations. It's only some of the analysts who seemed disappointed. I think Apple knows exactly what it's got in terms of product maturity, and they see that as a positive for moving into the enterprise. Enterprises typically like more stable, more mature technology. Oddly enough, Apple and IBM, which no longer makes products in this particular category, give enterprises the combination of stability and size that makes the enterprise buyer customer comfortable.
Okay, Lou, I'm going to throw this over to you with full knowing that you may have to guard what you say. But when I think of tablets in the enterprise, when I think of BYOD devices in the enterprise, and I think of enterprise-grade hardware and software, honestly, I don't think of iOS and I don't think of Android. Even though Windows tablet offerings haven't been great, they actually work much better with the enterprise, with security and with the network setup as they are. Is this an entree for Microsoft? Is Microsoft hoping to push the tablets in that direction?
So I think when a customer or corporation looks to buy a device for their people, even for their clientele or their salespeople, they look specifically first towards the application or the offering that's there, and then they look to basically what's offered from a hardware perspective or from a device management perspective from an enterprise. So like from banks, when they want to give it to their salespeople or whatever, they're going to look to the application first and then say, okay, great application, let's see if the device supports what we need. And so most of the time, the amount of apps on our iOS, this is kind of fulfilling that gap where they had the app, but they didn't have all the enterprise capability that other devices have, like Windows or Google. So I think that this will help them for sure. With Microsoft, though, they've had it for a while. So now basically what it's showing in the market is that Apple's striving really hard, grasping for straws to fulfill a gap that they haven't had for a really long time when companies like Microsoft or Google have had it for a while. And now they're just kind of getting up with the apps. So I think that's where it's kind of a balance factor when it comes to that aspect.
Well, gentlemen, the whole Windows /Android /iOS debate doesn't quite bring out the anger like it used to. So let's try another one. Are we backing the wrong horse in the net neutrality debate? Now, there's been a lot of fiery rhetoric going back and forth about what net neutrality means, and most of it has portrayed the ISPs as sort of the evil, profit-mongering, backwards-looking corporations that are trying to strangle more profits out of the big content providers like Google and Netflix. But is this really the case? According to the ISPs, no, they're the victims. In comments submitted by the FCC through the National Cable and Telecommunications Association, which represents Comcast, Time Warner, Cox, Charter, Cablevision, and other ISPs, the NCTA claims, and I quote, "If a broadband provider were to approach one of these hypergiants and threaten to block or degrade access to its site if it refused to pay a significant fee, such a strategy would certainly be self-defeating in light of the immediate hostile reaction of consumers to such conduct. Indeed, it is more likely that these large ad networks would seek to extract payments from ISPs for delivery of video over last-mile networks." In other words, what they're trying to argue is that they don't need to be regulated. There don't need to be net neutrality rules because the market will provide, the market will adjust. They're essentially saying, look, we can't throttle Netflix because if we did, people would leave our services and they'd go to another service. And so therefore, everything will just take care of itself. Let me give this to you first, Curtis. Do you see any problems with that particular logic?
Well, I think that if most customers lived in an area where there was genuine competition for broadband access, then that would be a very valid argument. But the fact is, in most locations, the cable companies, and let's face it, for most people today, cable defines broadband access. The cable is a statutory monopoly, one cable provider per community. And in situations like that, expecting the market to be a real corrective force is, at the very least, disingenuous.
Right, right. Let me throw over to you, Lou, because there's another part of this, which is one part of the NCTA statement actually was true, and that is Netflix could supposedly charge the ISPs to carry their content. My question to you is, what would be wrong with that? I mean, we seem to be stuck in this framework where the ISPs provide service, and then you've got Netflix, and Netflix needs to pay the ISP in order to transit their service. But it seems to me that we're now in a generation where the only reason why we have these ISPs, the only reason why we have these subscription is to access these content-rich providers. And if they can't do that, if they won't do that, then there's no reason for us to subscribe to those ISPs. Is there a change? Are people starting to see a difference between what it means to be an ISP and a content provider?
I think there is. I think the people are finally seeing, people are basically finally seeing that potentially the content is almost more valuable than the ISP. And so if you are a big fan of the Netflix content and you can't get it, it's not very good on the current network that you're on, you might actually look to go to another network just to get the content. Another thing I saw was around Netflix potentially charging people more subtly for the network that they are on. So, charging $7.99 when you're on Fios network versus $6.99 if you're on a Google network. I don't know if that's even plausible, if that makes sense, but that's a subtle way of saying you're not on a very good network, so we're going to charge you more because the interconnection fees are higher on this network or whatnot. So that could potentially happen as well from a network side. And I think that people are starting to separate the two, I think.
Let me throw some more gas on the fire here, because it's too easy to look at Comcast and Verizon and all the other telcos as evil, evil, evil. But now we've got something out of an independent ISP created by Brett Glass. Now, if the name sounds familiar, that's because he was a BSD developer and the founder of one of the very first ISPs in the country. He has come out swinging against Netflix and net neutrality. In his words, and again I quote, "Netflix generates huge amounts of wasteful, redundant traffic and then refuses to allow ISPs to correct this inefficiency via caching. It fails to provide adequate bandwidth for its traffic to ISPs' front door and then blames their downstream networks when in fact they are more than adequate. Netflix told us that if we wanted to improve streaming performance, we should pay $10,000 a month for a dedicated link spanning nearly 1,000 miles to one of its peering points, just to serve it and no other streaming provider. It then launches misleading PR campaigns against ISPs that dare to object to this behavior." Now, I'm torn, and I want to throw this over to you first, Lou. I'm torn because I like the little guy. I love the scrappy ISP. I love the fact that Brett Glass was one of the first to create an ISP, seeing this new generation of desire to be connected. However, there's another part of me that's saying, yeah, that's the cost of doing business. If you're running a business that provides connectivity to people, you're going to have to pay to get the connectivity so the people get what they're paying for.
Absolutely.
Am I misreading this?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think look at all of the cloud service offerings now with Amazon Web Services and Google Services and Microsoft Azure. I mean, all of these services are paying to position their data centers all around the world in order to make sure that they're going to serve those customers better. And ensure that they're going to be in the right place at the right time with the best latency. I think that happens with Netflix too. They're going to have to pay for these types of data centers as well as pay for these types of connections and these types of caching and so on and so forth in order to get the best performance for their customers. I mean, that's just how it is. They're going to have to identify a market and say this market is the one that we're targeting to get better performance, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to pay for it. I mean, that's just how potentially business work. So because sometimes the complaining can sometimes flip sides, I guess you could say.
Right. And throwing over to you, Curtis, it strikes me that the market will provide, the market will adjust is exactly apt for Brett Glass. I mean, if he cannot get his ISP to provide enough bandwidth, if he cannot connect to the services that his customer wants, then he, in effect, is shutting down his business. I mean, that's the market correcting because there is competition. I mean, if he can't do it, someone else will.
Oh, that's absolutely true. If he can't provide it, and let's say now, I remember ISPs talking about the fact that they wanted to get out of the pipe business almost 20 years ago. The people who were visionaries could see in the mid-90s where things were going, and that pure connectivity was going to be an increasingly low margin, high volume business that many of them wanted no part of. That's exactly what we're seeing. Ultimately, the right answer is for the ISPs and the big video providers. And let's be really clear, the huge bandwidth requirements are all about video. You will never move enough basic email to have the kind of impact that video does. But those providers, the video providers, the ISPs, are going to have to come up with some sort of agreement by which they essentially pay one another. Each side will come out. I think the real argument right now, and where we're seeing people really position themselves, is over the question of which one of them is going to have to raise their prices to the customer in order to pay for all this. Ultimately, both of them will need to do so, but neither one wants to be first. And so there is a degree of posturing going on. Everyone wants to position themselves as the friend of the consumer, when I really believe that the rational folks on both sides recognize that each will ultimately have to raise their price at least a little in order to continue to provide great service to the ultimate customer.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. Coming up will be Raphael Mudge, who's going to be talking to us about threat intelligence and security assessment. But before that, let's take some time to thank the second sponsor of the Twiat Riot, and that's TechServe. Now, we're seeing some amazing technologies deployed on iPads today. In fact, we just talked about it. Businesses keep coming up with interesting ways to make more money off of the same amount of resources, all by using the iPad. Now, for example, the Institute of Culinary Education equips students, faculty, and chefs with the iPad, empowering them to do away with heavy and unwieldy textbooks and streamline the learning process. A major cable service provider in the Northeast gave its field technicians, who are the public face of the company, iPads that have been configured to provide better service to customers. And retail companies have enhanced their in-store experience by using the iPad, not just as a point-of-sale device, but as a spot where customers can learn about sales, special offers, and upcoming events. These clients and more have turned to TechServe, the country's largest Apple reseller that sells, supports, and manages the largest iPad deployment projects in the world, all to manage their iPad projects. If you're considering adding iPads to your business, why not ensure the project's success with an experienced partner? TechServe assists businesses of all sizes to deploy Apple solutions, as well as solutions from Avid, Adobe, and more throughout the United States. No matter if you've started deploying iPads already or are just getting started, TechServe can and should help. So here's what we want you to do. Right now, TechServe is offering a complimentary download just for my listeners who are deploying iPads or who are interested in learning more about doing so. Go to techserve.com/Twiat-7sins to get access to the 7 deadly sins of iPad deployment and see the common pitfalls that throw companies for a loop during their iPad projects. This complimentary download is available right now for just my listeners at tekserve.com/Twiat-7sins. And we thank TechServe for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. We welcome back to the show after a 3-month absence our security guru himself, Mudge, Raphael Mudge, the advanced pen tester. Raphael, thank you so very much for coming back to This Week in Enterprise Tech. Oh, you're muted.
How do I sound now?
Now, there we go. Fantastic. Raphael, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming back to Twiat. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing since the last time you were on the show?
Oh wow, I've been pretty busy, Padre. So I always joke that March and April, and now it goes into May and June for me, is red teaming season. So I get to do a number of engagements. Some of them as a volunteer, others against professional blue teams, and I've been using those opportunities to advance a few ideas and work on a research agenda.
Oh, research agenda. Tell me a little bit about this.
Okay, so one of the things, and this is strange timing, if anything, but I'm happy that the timing lines up. It seems that one of the buzzwords in 2014 in the security space, and we love our buzzwords, is the word threat. I'm looking at my LinkedIn feed, and I keep seeing that my friend this is now threat intelligence manager here, or this person is a threat assessment person here or there and everywhere. And basically the concept of merging information about what real attackers are doing into the way we conduct our security programs is something people are finally starting to take seriously. It's a really interesting time.
Okay, hold on a bit. I hear this all the time when people start talking about threat intelligence and security assessments. They do sound a little bit about buzzwords because not a lot of people have defined exactly what they mean when they talk about that. Can you tell me what is a really good example of threat intelligence? What is encompassed within the buzz term threat intelligence?
Okay, that's a good question. So one of the things that really kind of kicked off the buzz around threat intelligence was when a company called Mandiant came out with a report on an actor they called APT1. It was February, and I might be getting my time mixed up, 2013, I want to say. Everything happens so fast, so think for a moment. This report, and let me actually put it up here on my shared screen, if you will.
It'll pop right up. There you go.
Yep. And let me just do a quick Google for that. So this is a spontaneous poll, but it's certainly worth pulling up. And what Mandiant did was they exposed an actor that they point to China for this one. They exposed their indicators, their tradecraft, their favorite remote access tools, and just how these folks did business. And this report is kind of the quintessential example of threat intelligence, because some people claim threat intelligence is just, hey, here's some hashes and here's some IP addresses of known bad stuff. Other people claim, well, no, intelligence is a finished product, something you can act on. It's information you can use for making decisions about where to allocate resources and what really matters to you.
Okay, so threat intelligence sort of, it tracks what's happening in the world. It looks for particular threats, for particular breaches, it gives people information that they can act on. So would that be one of the defining factors? It has to be, it's not intelligence unless you can do something with it. It's not enough to say, oh yeah, there's a virus going around in the wild. It would have to be along the lines of, we understand that right now there's a malware attack that's using this vector, that's looking for these kinds of machines, that's originating from this country. That's intelligence, right?
That's beautiful, Padre. We should record that again. No, capture that. No, absolutely. The part about meaningful to you and actionable is really important, because there's a lot of things out there like threat meters, like the current threat meter. Well, here, let me take it to this. We all know about the DHS threat meter, right? The one that says, yeah, the threat level is 4. That means nothing to me, right?
I preferred it when it was orange. Like, the threat level is magenta. I was like, wait, what? What does that mean exactly?
But I'll give you a good example of that. Airlines canceling flights into Israel because rockets are coming close to where their airport is. That's something where, oh, well, people are really worried about this, and it means a lot to me. Like, I'm not going to fly anywhere near where rockets are being fired. That's actionable to me if I know that.
Right, right. So you're talking about sort of security theater versus actual security assessment.
Right. And one of the things where I tend to run afoul of the way a lot of folks think is a lot of folks are so used to hearing about threat intelligence, and only in the buzzword sense. They're used to hearing folks who are taking and making it a big marketing spiel. And so there's a lot of negative sentiment towards this stuff. But when you get down to it, knowing what an adversary is doing, knowing if they're coming after you or your sector, being able to identify if that kind of attack is in progress on your network today, that stuff's really important for getting ahead of a well-resourced actor with custom tools. In fact, it's probably the only way you're going to get ahead of somebody like that. You're not going to do it with just a magical device that can catch anything.
Yeah, and unfortunately in our business, that's what we like to do. And I hear this all the time from our audience, which is, well, you know, it's interesting to have so-and-so guests talking about such and such a topic, but what we really want to know is, what do we suggest to our CTO, or what do we suggest to our CFO to buy and install to get rid of it? And that, you know that that's not how it works. I mean, that works to catch attacks that have signatures, but not so great against the advanced persistent stuff. Now, let me ask this. So now that we know what a threat intelligence is, there's another buzzword, which is the security assessment. What is that? How does that differ from a threat intelligence?
Okay, what I love about security assessments, particularly penetration tests, red team assessments, pick your favorite word. One of the roles of somebody, an outsider, professional, or even an inside team that's kept a little bit separate, one of their roles is to come into your organization and help you validate assumptions. Presumably, if you buy a solution, presumably if you buy intelligence from a provider who sells it, presumably all of these things you put in your program are providing some sort of value. Until you bring somebody in to look at that and actually test it and push back on your program a little bit, you don't really know if those pieces are working or not. So the point of a security assessment, however it's structured, is to just come in and test out your program and make sure it's doing what you think it does.
Right. Okay. And how do I combine those two? So if I were to go to our mythical 10,000 seat enterprise network, and I were to sit down at a board meeting and say, okay, these these are the threats that we have intelligence on. This is the assessment that we have of our own resources and capabilities. How do I turn that into something that is meaningful?
Okay, sure. Well, let's do it like this. Let's take it from the standpoint of a security assessment, because that's what I think about, and that's kind of where my head is how do you actually evaluate a program, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to? And in particular, I do this in the red teaming space is where I work the most. So let's go over to my magical little screen here.
Yep.
All right, cool. And what I want to show you first, this is a really cool resource. Somebody went to the effort, and I'll just give them a quick shout out. Kieran Bandla, I saw this link on Twitter, thought it was fantastic. They put together a GitHub repository of these different reports that different companies have put out publicly talking about different actors. And these are all great examples of threat intelligence in action. Now, not all of them represent great levels of sophistication, but remember, this is the stuff that's getting caught and the stuff these folks are willing to give away for free. So keep that in mind too. But here's their 2014 reports. And one of them that came out in 2014 was a report on an actor called Putter Panda. And this is from June 2014, put out by a company called CrowdStrike, okay? And I think there was an article in Time, and it got a little bit of press. It did pretty well. And what this report does is it goes through their attempt to attribute this actor, attempt to look at this malware that they were seeing and say, here's who we think is using it. And they also provided what they call technical indicators. Indicators are things that a sensor could observe, so you could say, I think this is this actor working against my network, okay? And just to kind of show you that, one of the indicators, one of their rats, they call HTTP client. And right here is what CrowdStrike gives us about what this actor happens to look like on the wire. And let me just adjust my screen size a little bit so you can see the whole thing. So give me a second here. The fun thing is I'm using the Kali Linux PDF viewer, so we might have to suffer through this together because let's do this. 150%, go. Okay, that's better.
Boom, okay.
But these are the indicators that CrowdStrike's given out on this particular actor. They're just using a simple web-based command and control. Now, the other thing too is a favored attack vector of this actor is not necessarily to use exploits, but what they like to do is take a document that's of interest to their target and embed it into an executable, change its icon to look like something else, and email it to a target. And that's a file dropper. If target opens up that executable, it drops the document to disk, opens it, and the target thinks nothing wrong happened, but in the background, the attacker's malware is running, right? We're good so far, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So now a question becomes, let's say we're doing a security assessment. What would make sense to test a company's ability to ingest and act on this report? Like, let's not take it in the context of this public report. Let's take it in the context of something private. You paid a firm like CrowdStrike or Mandiant or another company, said, okay, or Eyesight Partners even, and said, guys, here's about a pile of money. Tell me when you think there's something I need to be worried about. And they come back with a private report. And now you, the CTO, you want to know, are we acting on this information? Is there a disconnect between what my technical program is doing and this information I've been given, right? The only way to really test that is to conduct an assessment and find out, are we using this information? And as much as possible, you would want your red team to look like that actor, conduct an attack as that actor would, so you can actually see, are your folks catching this attack, and are they actually conducting the proper analysis to attribute it to whoever you think is coming and connect what they're seeing to the intelligence. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So Raphael, let me ask you this.
Sure.
I mean, this sounds like something that should be the standard. This is what you should be doing when you're doing an assessment of your security protocols, right? But I don't recall ever seeing this happening at any of the organizations I've worked at.
So that's a really interesting question. So ultimately, when I'm going to show you something new, until a couple of weeks ago, I would argue that without a lot of custom software being written, it wasn't possible to do an assessment like this. It wasn't possible to look like another actor. So I sell software, as all of you know, and I sell software predominantly to organizational red teams that work for really big companies trying to test out their security controls. And they can't do assessments like this yet. What they can do is use custom malware, usually something they have that they either bought or they built, and come in and look like themselves, something that presumably the sensors and tools don't pick up, but they don't have a way to look like anybody else. Okay. But that's one of the things I've been working on for about a year and a half now. I've had something under wraps. I even tried to get DARPA to fund it. But about 2 weeks ago, I put this technology out. It's called Malleable C2, or Malleable Command and Control.
Okay. Let's take a look at, go ahead and get that demo ready. I do want to do a round of our hosts here.
Sure.
Go to you first, Curtis. When we start talking about security and threat assessment and intelligence assessment, the most often thing I see are executive eyes that start to glaze over. And again, it's because they typically don't care what the assessments are. They don't care what the threats are. They just want to know, okay, are we protected? Are we legally responsible? Do we need to buy something to put into our data center to protect us from this? Is it your experience that it's been very difficult to get into this sort of deep level with executives when we start talking about security?
Oh, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. The executives really want to know what they need to do about it. They don't feel like they need to know the absolute details of the attack. They'd sort of like to know what kind of attack. I mean, is this something that's going to steal credit card numbers? Is it something that's an attack against their intellectual property? That kind of thing. But all of the deep details, they really would rather not know. And I think that one of the keys for IT is being able to take the information that they get, all of the detail that Raphael has been talking about, and boil it down and say, you know, we've got this 700-page manual of stuff, but here are the 3 paragraphs that matter. Here's where we're going to be attacked, here's what we could lose, and here's how much we need to spend to try and keep it from happening. If IT can do that, then they will have made superb use of the kind of information that Raphael's talking about giving them.
Lou, I want to go over to you, and I want to sort of open this up, because I've been watching you in chat, and I've been watching you in the doc. What Raphael's talking about is it's a fundamentally different way of looking at threats to your enterprise, a fundamentally different way of looking at threats to your network. You know, breaking down threat intelligence from security assessment, and then having some sort of red team with auditing software that is strong enough to actually replicate multiple threats is not something that we've pushed really strong. Is this, again, I'm going to call on your connection to Microsoft. Is this something that Microsoft is even looking at doing, or this is not even on the radar?
So Microsoft constantly strives for like the best practices using the tools that they have, but you know, some of the stuff Raphael is going over is interesting, because they're ways to actually bring to the surface issues that potentially IT has never really considered, and this kind of brings to the surface and makes them look at it harder. And you know, and I'm not real sure where Microsoft comes from that play. So they provide the broader access and the deep systems and the deep information, the deep analysis, the deep data, the tools to actually perform all that. But sometimes it takes a professional and or a team like you're talking about to kind of bring that the correct information to the surface and make it more prominent to the IT individuals so that they can make the appropriate decisions. And you know, Microsoft does have tools and systems to do that as well. But again, you know, sometimes it takes a team that can kind of follow the trends and the flows to kind of bring that surface even faster.
Mudge, show us what is the future of assessment.
I have to do the future kind of hand wave.
Those are jazz hands. I'm sorry, that's different.
We need a symbol for the future. Okay, so let's go back to my nifty screen here. And remember, one of the key ideas of a security assessment is to validate assumptions about your program, to be able to go to the CTO and say, we're comfortable, things are working as they should, and that our investment we put into this program, people, programs, processes, et cetera, is sound. We've actually acted on it properly, okay? And I have a nice lesson about that. You'll see that in this demo. So bear with me for a moment. So the technology I have for threat replication to conduct an assessment looking like a threat is called Malleable C2. And what it is, it's the ability for me, your red team person, to craft up a profile which changes my malware communication to look like something else, to look like another actor's tool set. So you can start to actually exercise that analytical and attribution process. And let me show you that. Here we are. This is Putter Panda. Okay, this is their indicators. Notice default.aspx happens to be what they happen to do a GET request for. That's going to play a little bit later. And let me show you the profile for that. I'm going to go ahead and open up putter.profile. And this is my profile. It's a little computer program that changes what my communication looks like to match this Web C2 for Putter Panda.
Oh, okay.
And pretty much taken from the report, I'm pulling to default.aspx. I'm pulling the same user agent information and information I have to transmit in this particular malware. For example, metadata about the target is being transformed and stored in the transaction in a way that's similar to what the real malware would do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin up Cobalt Strike, and I'm going to tell it to use that profile. So let's go to Profiles, APT, putter.profile. And this is going to change up my communication to look like this Putter Panda actor.
So let me try to understand here. You've basically just been able to load up a bulletin, a security bulletin, and load up the threats to be able to use inside your advanced security tool here.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
I've made it
nice.
so I can take a security bulletin and cloak myself to look like the other actor. And just to kind of, as I take you through things, just show you what's really going on here, I also have another tool inside of my target network called Security Onion. And Security Onion is an open source collection of network defense tools. It's a network security monitoring device in a box. It's fantastic. And on here, I have a Wireshark running so we can see our traffic, see what it looks like. And I'm also running an open source security monitoring tool called Snort. Mm-hmm. And Snort happens to have rules now for Putter Panda because that report was put out in June 2014. So my goal is going to be to exploit a target, look like Putter Panda, and trigger Snort in such a way that it thinks I'm Putter Panda. And that's what we're aiming to do, to show that, hey, we can actually detect this Putter Panda actor. But stay with me because there's one little ironic twist at the very end of this. You'll appreciate it. So here we are in Cobalt Strike, my attack system, with the profile for Putter Panda loaded. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to craft up a dropper attack that's going to deliver my beacon that looks like Putter Panda. And I don't happen to have an ad for a spa, but what I did is took some news from space.com and turned it into a PDF file. And I'm going to generate an executable that drops that PDF to disk. And I'm going to call it spacenews.pdf.exe. And just give it a moment to come up. This laptop here is like 5 years old. It's my Twiat demo laptop, I call it.
Now, there are going to be some people who are watching this are going, I'm not exactly sure what's going on. What you're doing, and this is incredible. It's actually got me shocked. Is you're able to take a threat intelligence report, a bulletin from Microsoft, and then drop it into this so that you look like the attacker from the threat intelligence. In other words, you get to verify that the threat intelligence is true, and you get to launch an attack. You get to do a security assessment from the threat intelligence itself. That's amazing. I mean, you've basically combined threat intelligence and security assessment in one shot.
That's the exact goal of this. And it's, again, a tool to help you validate assumptions. So going a little bit further, what you just saw me do is I crafted an attack that's similar to what this actor might do, which is I've crafted an attack that packages a PDF into an executable, and when it's run, it kicks off malware that will look like our Putter Panda actor on the wire. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just go ahead and let this malware run on this target system here, my Windows 7 system. And let me bring in my security onion as well, so we can have the magic happen at the same time. And there we go. So many moving parts, but I want to show the magic happening all at once. So let me go ahead and hit run. And what's going to happen is it's going to open up this PDF file for me, the target. And if we come over here, we can see that Security Onion is showing Trojan activity from Putter Panda command and control, HTTP request. So this is my false flag operation where I'm looking like this Putter Panda actor.
Right.
And if we come over here to Wireshark, we can see that my C2 now resembles this actor, Putter Panda. Let's go file TCP stream. And my C2 is now looking like this actor, okay? Now there is an ironic twist here. And I think this is pretty funny. And I hope none of the CrowdStrike guys take this as too heavy of a hit. I really appreciate the report.
They will. Lay it on us, bro.
Remember, the point of a security assessment, I have to get really close for this. The point of a security assessment is to validate assumptions, right?
Right.
Okay, well, when CrowdStrike put out this Putter Panda report, they also provided snort rules that people could use right away from the report that would detect this actor. Now, the rules in my Security Onion are updated from these rules. So the new rules that are out there are better. But the rules in the report by default were written too strict. And they would not catch the Putter Panda actor, the HTTP client malware, as described in the report. Because they happen to depend on /default.asp question temp, and the report clearly states default.aspx. And that's what my profile looks like.
But this is exactly where this tool becomes invaluable, because you can test the assumptions. They give you a set of assumptions on the way the system is going to be set up in order to run the vulnerability. And if you've got software that can take their bulletin directly and test it against something as if you are that actor, I've never had that before. That's incredible. Let me open this back up to our co-host, Lou. This is something that it strikes me that Microsoft would love, because one of the things we always hear about Microsoft bulletins. We hear about, okay, there's a threat here, there's an exploit here, there's a vulnerability here. It sounds like the next step to be able to say, okay, click this. I want to test the assumptions of this bulletin as the actor it's reporting on my system. To have a tool that can do that, that seems like the next logical step for any sort of security audit.
Oh yeah, I think that's a super cool tool to be able to automate the process based off of bulletin. I think it makes sense even from a system standpoint. If you have your own isolated environment, sandbox environment that you want to test to see how vulnerable your system is, that's a super cool tool to have. It might be a bulletin from Adobe, it might be a bulletin from Microsoft. They can apply the same logic for both. I mean, that's something that's truly valuable to an IT professional, somebody who might not actually know what the threat is or if their system is vulnerable. So this is awesome stuff. Really cool.
Right. It's a nice way to test your system against a vulnerability without actually worrying about the vulnerability. Curtis, let me throw this over to you. We had that discussion just in the last break about how it's difficult to explain to executives why you need certain resources or where you're vulnerable and where you're not. This sounds like the things that they would understand, because you can show them a security bulletin and they'll gloss over. But if you run it in a tool like this and say, this is what this bulletin looks like in the real world against our setup, that's something that they can actually wrap their head around.
You're absolutely correct. Being able to show them is important. Now, watching this, I was blown away. And I was honestly thinking about all the times that I worked on evaluating, reviewing, and testing products, that this would have been just a godsend for making some of our test routines. But it did bring up for me an interesting question, and that is whether or not this is a tool that makes it too easy. One of the advantages of the skill that has been necessary to do this sort of in-depth testing is that as you gained that skill, you tended to gain as well some skill on how to apply that knowledge, either in terms of patching the vulnerabilities or in explaining it to executives. My own, and this is weird, I can't even believe that I'm saying this, but I wonder whether this will allow people who don't have the expertise to know what to do with the information to generate data that could lead them in interesting directions. I think, now, to me, that's an interesting enterprise and an organizational issue, and it takes nothing away from the marvel of the technology itself, but it does raise a question for me.
No, I understand that. And actually, Raphael, I think this is important for you to address, because the last time you were on, we got a lot of Twitter hate from a couple of people who they couldn't believe, why would you invite someone to come on who his entire life is based off of destroying people's security? And there does seem to be, anytime we have a tool that's as powerful as, like, say, Cobalt Strike, to say, why are you doing this? You're letting people who don't have the skill to exploit these loopholes in security to get into where they shouldn't be. What would be your general response to that?
My general response would be that the way we do security assessments now do not look anything like the attacks our organizations face from these well-resourced actors who are using custom tools. And we need to, as offensive professionals, white hat offensive professionals, we need to challenge our customers better, not just challenge them against an actor that looks like us, but we need to challenge them against what they're actually going to face, so our customers can actually develop better strategies, actually test out their ideas and sharpen their claws and tradecraft against what we're offering. And it's a double-edged sword. You put something out there. Did you open up Pandora's box? The good news is everything I'm doing is stuff that others have already done. It's just the folks who've already done it are the bad guys. And I'm trying to make these different communication strategies available for the actual assessments.
You've got people in the chat room who are saying, uh-oh, people are scared now. And I think every time you come onto the show, people do get scared. I want to continue, and actually Curtis has some fantastic comments about the future of IT, especially in smaller businesses, but unfortunately we've run out of time. I do want to thank my host for being on here to talk about security, to talk about security assessment, threat intelligence. It's always a fantastic episode whenever we have Mudge on. Lou, let me start with you. Can you tell the folks where they can find you and where they can find your work?
Definitely. Twitter, at LouMM. And also check out crm.dynamics.com. All the great work that we're doing over the past 6 months is slowly rolling out, and you guys will see the CRM on the new devices coming soon.
It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And Lou, I heard a rumor from someone that you might actually be making a return appearance as a code warrior on Coding 101 sometime in the near future.
Maybe. Check it out. Twit.tv Coding 101. We'll see.
Lou Maresca, Senior Developer with Microsoft. Thank you so very much. Curtis, over to you. You've always got interesting things happening over at Information Week Radio. What's going on this week?
Well, we've got the regular episode on Tuesday. On Thursday, we've got the first of our preview episodes for the upcoming Interop show in New York. We'll be running those weekly from now until late September when Interop happens. And on Friday, I've got something really special. Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, I interviewed the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about how they're using social media to talk about all of the natural wonders in this country, and especially things like the wildlife reserves, the various properties that the Fish and Wildlife Service deal with. That's a great interview. We're going to have people from the Fish and Wildlife Service on as part of the discussion. I think that's going to be great, and I would love it if a lot of folks would come and join us.
Fantastic. Please check them out over at Information Week. And, of course, Raphael Mudge. Raphael, I don't know why we wait so long between your appearances, because you always blow us away. It is deeper level, but what your tool does is I wouldn't have imagined it possible. To simply drop in a bulletin and attack yourself as that actor, that's a fantastic bit of programming, my friend. Where can people find more information about your tools, more about you, and more about what you're doing?
Sure. To find out more about what I'm doing, take a look at blog.cobaltstrike.com, which you can find linked to on advancedpentest.com as well. And if anybody in your audience is going to be at Black Hat or DEF CON next week, I'm going to be out there giving away DVDs with a complete hacking lab on it, including step-by-step instructions to actually become familiar with these kinds of tool sets, so you can start thinking about targeted attacks and how that process works.
Wow. I'll be there, and I'll make sure to get a DVD or two.
Please, I'd be happy. Oh, that's going to be wonderful. I look forward to meeting you in person finally.
I'll take you out to Crab or something. Raphael Mudge from advancedpentest.com, thank you again for being on. And folks, thank you. Thank you for listening to the best dang hour of Enterprise podcast in the world. That's according to 9 out of 10 pen testers. Now, we do thank all of our hosts, but we also thank you, our loyal viewer, our loyal listener, our loyal audience. Now, whether you listen to this in the car or watch this on your mobile device or back home at TV, we want to give you an easier way to get every episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech on your device of choice. Just go to our show page at twit.tv/Twyet, and you'll find a little drop-down menu that will show you all the different choices to get every episode in the format that you want, be it audio, video, or high-definition video, on your iPhone, your iPad, your Android phone or tablet, your Windows or OS X PC, your Zombie Zoom, whatever it may be. We want to help you get Twyet to where you want to listen or watch it. Also, did you know that you can find me on Twitter? That's right. Go to twitter.com/PadreSJ. You'll find not just what I'm going to be doing each week for This Week in Enterprise Tech, but what I do on all my other shows on Twit. That includes Twyet on Mondays at 2:30. That includes Know-How and Coding 101 at 11 o'clock and 1:30 on Thursday. And, of course, Padres Corner Friday night coming soon. I also want to thank everyone here at the Brick House who makes this show possible. To Carson, my super producer, to Lisa and Leo who tolerate me. And of course, I'm so happy to have back my TD extraordinaire. He was ill, he once was lost, but now he's found. It's Mr. Jason Howell. Jason, thank you for coming back. And can you tell the folks, well, maybe what you do every Tuesday and Friday?
I can. It's good to be back. It's good to be here. My week just isn't complete without my Enterprise show. All About Android is the Android show that I do every Tuesday at twit.tv/AAA. And then I have a new Android show that's all about apps, and it's called Android App Arena. And it's twit.tv/arena. That's every Friday. So check it out.
Thank you so very much, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. I'm Father Robert Ballecer, just reminding you that if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep Twyet.